Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new chapter of our Open Innovation Thursdays. My name is Marisol Menendez. I'm an open innovation practitioner, and I'm an ecosystem orchestrator. I have my own company and my own ecosystems. I dedicate my life to study, enjoy, and implement open innovation in many different ways. And that's why it's such a joy for me to do these conversations every Thursday in English and every Tuesday in Spanish. We do Martes de Innovación Abierta. And every Thursday, we are speaking with each of the authors of the Oxford Handbook of Open Innovation, published in February 2024, edited by Henry Chesbrough, Bim van Haverbeke, Joe West, and Agnieszka Radziwon. And we are already in chapter 43, and this is really a joy. And it brings us to interesting conversations like the one we will have today with Bill Roschek. Bill, how are you today? Welcome.
Hi, Marisol. Great to be here.
Thank you very much for connecting and being a good sport to speak 15 minutes about open innovation. Just a tidbit and a flavor of what the chapter of your book is about. Thank you very much for connecting. Where are you connecting from?
So I am sitting right now in St. Louis, Missouri, where I work for Nestlé Purina Pet Food. So we are the pet care, pet food business of Nestlé.
Oh, this is very, very interesting. We will talk more about it. We always like to dedicate a little bit of this podcast to learn more about the people who are behind the chapter and learn about their career paths and their experience. So can you tell us a little bit about you?
I'd be happy to. So I have been with Nestlé Purina for almost 5 years now as their Director of Strategic Innovation. In this role, I get to do a lot of open innovation, but even beyond that, really, how do we implement and develop innovation processes and practices across Purina R&D. And so this is really exciting. So open innovation is a big foundational thing for us, but we do a lot more when we think about accelerating and incubating and how do we bring the outside world in and across our walls of Purina. Prior to Purina, I worked in global R&D at Givaudan Flavors in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I managed a team of food scientists, and we developed processes and flavors, and with our flavorists and sensory scientists to really kind of create new experiences with large food companies. Before that, I got my first taste of open innovation working for a small consulting company in Cincinnati, Ohio, called 4Inno. They've since been bought by PA Consulting, but it was really exciting there to be able to kind of get my feet wet with open innovation and understand how we can really make the world one's laboratory. And so some of my big, I was there for food and beverage to build up that portfolio. And one of my big clients was Purina. And so I kind of got to do what I was doing there. Now I get to do in-house, so to speak, with Nestlé Purina, and that's really exciting. My background is in chemistry. I have a PhD in organic and analytical chemistry from Vanderbilt University in
Wow.
Nashville, Tennessee. And my very first job after that was working in a health ingredient startup where now we'd call it artificial intelligence and machine learning. Back then, we were doing Excel macros to try to figure out and understand what some of the active ingredients are. So it was a really good, fast-paced environment, really exciting, but also, comes with all the startup challenges that people have. So a very wide and varied career that brought me here with a lot of different and exciting opportunities.
And this is one of the things that we love, and I'm particularly enjoying, is that there are many potential backgrounds and careers and ways to collaborate and connect. And, I'm very excited because today we are opening section 8, part 8 of the book, which is Open Innovation in Practice. This is chapter 43 already. We've been talking about open innovation for over a year now. And the name of the chapter is Open R&D in Large Corporation. You are the first author, Bill Roschek, together with Erica Jones, no?
Yes.
And so how this chapter came to be? How is it part of the book? What was the story to get here?
Sure. So first, maybe I can start with a little bit more about my current role. Within my current role, we have really three main goals or objectives in how we look at innovation and especially how we leverage open innovation for Purina. One is we want to discover external opportunities. What's going on outside or across the walls of Nestle that we could use for pet food and pet care. We then want to incubate these ideas and ultimately get them to accelerate into market. And throughout the chapter, the reader will see, and you will see kind of the processes we go through to get there, right? We have a very deliberate and dedicated process where we try to work with our partners and our R&D scientists to define the problems we're trying to solve. We then go out and search for those solutions, whether they are internal across the Nestle R&D network or external through universities and startups and other opportunities. And then we bring them in, primarily we bring them into license opportunities, start to incubate and turn them into reality. So through all of that process, I hope the reader will ultimately get to understanding that through sort of deliberate and dedicated processes, you can innovate pretty quickly and aggressively within large organizations, leveraging open innovation as an or proposition, not sorry, as an and proposition, not internal or external, but it's both moving forward to make the best solution for our customers.
So interesting. And this is what you are trying to reflect in the book, or
Yeah. I mean, I think when I laid it out, over the last 10, 15 years or so, we've really taken great strides at Purina to build the open innovation framework and have it sort of model behavior across R&D. And we've done that primarily through sort of the what I would consider the traditional outside in innovation, where we find a startup, we license the technology or try to do a joint development agreement in order to turn it into a product that we would manufacture. As we started to explore this model, as innovation practices have evolved over the last several years, one of the things I wanted to do when I came into this role was start to evolve that at Purina as well. So not only are we looking at sort of the classic outside in open innovation, but we're also looking at how we innovate across the walls of Nestle. What can pet care learn from food? What can food learn from confectionery? And so on. And so we really make the most of our intellectual capital within the Nestle R&D network.
wow. And what are the learnings that maybe other industries, or what are the core, the core learnings that are reflected within this chapter?
Sure. So I think there's sort of two things that really come to mind for me that I'm, very, very passionate about, but also pretty proud of that we've been able to kind of get instill behaviorally at Purina. One is we really focus on the why behind the work that we do. So it's not just, it's what we want to accomplish and why we want to accomplish it. And then we let the really, really smart people and the great scientists that we have figure out how to do it. Because we really do have some incredible scientists at Purina, and we love to work with them. But I think very importantly, it's understanding why you're doing the work. What's the reason? What's the reason behind it? And that allows us to make better decisions on what we should and should not be doing within R&D. The second thing is we've actually shown and built this model into our standard project portfolio of how to accelerate work across R&D. So when we're working with an external partner or an external vendor, and we bring in some of their new ingredients, let's say, we've developed a methodology and a process to accelerate this work to go from sort of acquisition or acquiring the material all the way up through product launch. And we've been able to, and this is reflected in the chapter as well, we launched five products in the first in the first 18 to 24 months that I was in this role. And that was something that was really unheard of at Purina. And by building that model, not just to get the launch out and be fast, but to really be deliberate in developing the process along the way, that now has been extended to other R&D units across Nestle, and we have an accelerator model throughout R&D that works very, very based off of these same principles. You leveraging open innovation, external opportunities, and bringing them through our internal protocols and processes much more quickly than we have in the past.
So interesting. And do you think there are takeouts maybe for other practitioners in other industries, and maybe also What about potential research areas for open innovation academics and researchers?
So I think one of the things that I really am impressed by with Nestle is we look at R&D as a network. So it's not just a group of people who work in beverage product development or coffee product development or pet food product development, but we really leverage the entire global R&D network. We treat R&D and really, Nestle as a whole as more of an organism, right? It's had an organism and organization have the same root. And if you look back through organizational dynamics and behaviors over time, you can see that sort of evolution of cultures and behaviors. And that gets really interesting for me. And so what I think from a practitioner standpoint is really, building that network, within the organization, within the industrial organization, to understand what capabilities are there. We don't always have to create something ourselves. We can often leverage something that's done through an adjacent space. And we've seen this time and time again as we transfer technology across R&D units, where we might have developed something that became very valuable and very popular for baby. Something being developed in our confectionery unit that becomes a product development mold for pet food and for treats. And that gets really exciting when we start to see that sort of transversal opportunities. With respect to academics, I think there's going to be a really nice opportunity to look at sort of the organizational behaviors. Like how do we instill this behavior over the organization for the long run? Because I think over the last several years, certainly throughout my careers, my evolution and my journey that I mentioned earlier, I've seen a pretty significant willingness to change from the non-admitted here syndrome to let's work with partners. And that all starts by building trust, right? You have to have trust in the people you work with, whether they're inside or outside your organization. And the ways to do that and the ways to show that become really important for the future.
This is very interesting. I think we end up always discussing or talking about the human dimension of open
Mhm.
innovation at the end
Mhm.
as an infrastructure to begin building open innovation. What skills does someone need to have to dedicate to work in these areas like the one that you are working in?
So what I have seen is that a more varied perspective becomes more valuable, right? I think at the end of the day, there's kind of two things for myself, right? That have allowed me to be successful in the space. One is I don't necessarily have a strict educational upbringing, if that makes sense. Yes, I have a PhD in chemistry, but I haven't solely been in chemistry and organic synthesis for my entire career. And I think that's broadened my perspective on what can be done. My team talks often about, building trust, building relations, and we do that through role modeling trust and open communication. We're very direct with each other, building that foundation of trust and credibility. And then we also have a big responsibility to the organization to bring in outside perspectives. We can't just give them an opinion. We have to show them how those opinions connect to their goals as well. And we can only get to that point by developing the trust. So it's really about having a more generalist approach where oftentimes organizations look for specialists. I think in this role, having a more generalist view on science could be very valuable.
So interesting. Well, every good moment gets to an end, and we are the last part of our conversation today. I always like to ask at the end, what would be the main takeout you want people to take from the chapter of this book, this chapter of the book?
So I think two things. I think number one, there has always been the adage that large companies don't innovate quickly. I don't think that's true. I just think we happen to do it in a different way. And that's really cool when you kind of get into the underbelly and see the work going on. It gets really exciting. But it does come back to how we communicate and how we interact with people. And building that trust and role modeling that trust is ultimately the most important in my mind. I think number two is, as I said earlier, we always want to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. But you can build in the how. You can build in the process that you need. This process that we've developed works for us, and it can be learned and it can be reproduced. However, the process that you need for your work and innovation may be different for you. So I think if you can understand that why you're doing something, and how to get there, you can develop, but it can be learned, and innovation as a process can be learned and developed for your organization.
This is very, very interesting, and thank you very much for sharing this case. I'm very glad that we're in the practitioner section of the book because we get to hear these real stories, and we will be following up Purina work with open innovation.
Yeah.
Thank you very
No,
much
that's
for your
great.
time, Bill. Thank you for connecting.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you very much, and for everyone, see you next Thursday in another session of Open Innovation. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.